Okay. So mediumship is basically speaking to people who have died. People who have died are kind of one step above human beings and one step below everybody else who is a spiritual being, because they were most recently human. And depending on where you are in the spiritual hierarchy, the closer you are to being human, the more free will you still retain. So human beings have free will, but spiritual beings really don't, or if they do, it's much more limited than what we have. That's kind of the trade-off. You have a body that limits you, but you have free will, so you can make more choices. You don't have a body, so you can do a lot of crazy stuff, but then you can't do things that require bodies or require access from people who have bodies. So mediumship, there's basically two kinds. There is spiritual mediumship, which is where you are in front of one person or a group of people, which is called platform or a gallery, and you're speaking to the people who have died. So they're connecting to you and they're just handing you all this information, and you just receive it and you spit it back out at whoever you are working for. And everything is mental. Like, it's your psychic senses are picking up what this person is trying to say to you, but the interaction between you and that deceased person is really just between you two. Like, the sitter probably doesn't see or experience what you are experiencing. If there's an audience, the rest of the audience would not be seeing or picking up on what you are experiencing also. Then there is physical mediumship, and that can be observed by other people who are present, and that takes a lot more energy. And what happens in physical mediumship is that the spirit entity isn't just connecting to you and handing you information just to share. They are plugging into your physical energy. It's like they've got like a cord, and they're like boom, and drawing your energy. And often they will draw from energy and of the other people in the room as well, if it again is an audience thing, which most of the time it is, because you really can't do physical mediumship by yourself. And then they are using that physical energy to materialize in some way, shape, or form. If you've ever heard of table tipping, that is a form of physical mediumship. They take that energy to be able to physically lift the table and move it around or knock on it. Certain ceremonies, like a uweepi, when the medicine man gets tied up and he's laying down, the spirits that he works with are tapping into his energy and everyone else is in the room. And then they are using that energy to take a physical enough form that they can pick up rattles, they can pick up whistles, anything that is laid out on the altar, they can pick it up and they can touch people with it. And that's how they heal people, is through touching them with the rattles and with the fans and with the whistles. They can make noise. Sometimes they can create light so that you can see parts of their body. They can reach out and they can touch you and you can actually feel them. Like, believe me, I've been to a lot of uweepies. These things are like, skeptics go to these and they have nervous breakdowns because they can't figure out what just happened. It completely changes their perspective about stuff. So like, they're really, really powerful. Another kind of physical mediumship is direct voice, which is where the spirit will use that energy to almost create like a voice box so that they can speak. And then they speak and everyone can hear them rather than just the medium. Leslie Flint, if you guys look up him, he's unfortunately dead now, but he was a medium who was very, very well known for direct voice. He might have been the last one that was like really, really good at that. Like that was definitely his gift and his skill. So those are the different types of mediumship when we're working mainly with someone who has died. And when you're doing mediumship, the way that you make sure that who you are talking to is actually who they say that they are is you validate. You ask, how did you die? How did you know the person that is sitting in front of me? Like, who in the audience that are you working for? How did you know them? What's your relationship to them? You give them an opportunity to share multiple stories that the sitter would be able to go, I remember that happening. Yes, I know who that is. Often you give them the chance to where you can describe how they looked to that person. They might give their name. That doesn't always happen. It kind of depends on more how the medium works than how the spirit works. So there's all these steps before you even get to the message that a mediumship reading goes through to basically prove that who you're talking to is really who you are talking to. And this isn't just for the purpose of like proof to prove to everyone there that when you die, you still live on. It's also so that you are making sure that the person you're talking to is really that person who's died and not some neutral spirit who is just coming in and claiming that they're this person just to start trouble with you or with other people. So that's the other part of it too, is you want to make sure it's a way to be protected and a way to protect the person or people that you're working for. So spirits versus the dead. I'll stop there real quick. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to ask before I move on?
I guess just with the spirit, the physical mediumship, is that similar also to like what we would think of traditionally as like in a seance where the energy of everybody would move tables or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If everyone can experience what's happening rather than just the medium, then that is physical mediumship. That's really what the defining factor is.
Okay.
One is subjective, the other is objective.
Right.
So spirits, and by spirits, I mean angels, demons, fairies, archons, cryptids, or whatever you call them, like the Sasquatch and Mothman type of guys, like those things. Versus people who have died is, again, it comes down to free will. People who have died have been human recently, like very recently. And I personally believe that every being that is in a spiritual sense, in spiritual form, has been human, or at least has been physical, maybe not a human, but a physical being at some point. And it's just the higher up you go, the longer it's been since they've last like incarnated in a physical form. And that includes gods and goddesses too. I think that they've just haven't been human for thousands and maybe millions of years. And so sometimes they forget how difficult that emotions are and things like that. And that makes it very, very easy for them to see things the way that they see them, but also kind of like they don't get some of the stuff. So that's kind of like the main difference. But also because a lot of times when you're working with a spirit, you don't personally know them the way you know someone who has died. The validation process is totally not going to work if, like, you're talking to an angel, for instance. That's not going to work. When he was last human, what were you? You know, you weren't on Earth at the same time, or if you were, not in this lifetime, you don't remember any of that. So how are you going to validate? So the way that you would validate for a spiritual being is more the intention. You set that intention before you start. I want to work only with this individual, with Anubis. I want to work only with Anubis. No other being can come in. No other entity can come in. I want to work only with Anubis, and only if he is willing and is in clear and coming with an intention of divine love. You say something like that, you say it out loud, you make it very, very clear. Anubis and no others. Because when you're at that level of the spiritual hierarchy, you can't come in unless you're invited. And if someone is saying, I'm not welcoming you, it doesn't matter where you are on the spiritual scale. If you're explicitly told you're not welcome, you can't come in here, you can't. You just can't. It's against the rules. It's not how, where if you're human and someone says, I don't want you to come in, they can open the door and walk in anyway. It doesn't work like that. If you're dead, if you're an angel, it's not the same. So that would be kind of how you would set it. Dr. John Dee, who had developed the Enochian system, he also had a bunch of prayers that he would start with. If you're more on the religious side, you could definitely do this too, because then you're already, by praying and by praying out loud, you're bringing yourself into a position where you're coming from a place of divine love, divine intention. And so naturally, just by being in that headspace, you're going to attract energy to you that is on that same wavelength. And that is also going to eliminate a lot of entities that just want to start trouble or that want to actively do harm. So that can help as well. But I would still explicitly say who you want to work with, not just praying first, but praying and also setting that intention can also help a lot. And then with Crowley, what he would do sometimes is he would try and test them. He would ask them questions like, what direction does the sun rise in? But I think even that, because these are very physical questions, about facts on Earth, they might not always be able to answer that, especially since timing is not their forte. So if it's anything that is related to time, that's going to throw them off also. So I think you'd probably have to know a little bit more about the specific entity that you would want to work with before you want to go down Crowley's route. He, usually knew exactly who he was talking to and exactly who he was asking for. So he already had all this prepared. And that's really how you want to do it. If you are talking to something that hasn't recently been dead, you do want to make absolutely sure that you know your subject, that you know who you're trying to call in and how they operate, and you want to know why. You don't just want to call them in just because you feel like it. You want to have an idea of how you want to work with them and what you want to do with them. So, like I had mentioned with time, spirits have some limitations. They don't have a sense of time the way that we do. So whenever you ask them something like, when am I going to meet a man? You're not going to get an accurate answer or an answer that makes sense to you. They might tell you you're going to meet a man in 5 years. And then it could be 5 months or 10 years or 5 weeks. They really have no clue. Every single time I've ever asked my guides anything, they've been 100% correct about what's happening and 100% not correct about when it's going to happen. It's always sooner or later than when they said. It's never right on time. You can kind of go around that by asking them for seasons or well, what's the weather look like when I find a man? I'm just I get asked that question a lot. So when I do psychic work. So, oh, well, it's going to be really cold out, but no leaves on the trees and no snow. you know, and you can say, what's it going to be like in my area, so that you know that they're describing what winter would be like in your area versus like winter in some other place, or, you know, something like that. It'll be daytime, the sun will be shining out, but it's going to be really cold. You know, things that can kind of help you get an idea. Ask what's happening at this time in my area too. Like that might help too, because then you can kind of pin it down somewhat. Even if not like like 100%. The other thing is they answer questions literally. For example, a friend of mine, before she married her now second ex-husband, she asked her guides if this man was her angel man. She had gotten readings about a man coming into her life and they would always refer to him as her angel man. So she asked if this individual was that person, and her guide said yes. And so she interpreted that as meaning that he was someone who was going to be perfect for her, and that they were going to get married and have a happy relationship. And what actually happened was they did get married. He believed in the spiritual stuff that she did, and he even like kind of dabbled in it, but not quite to the extent that she did. But he was a narcissist. He was financially abusive. He was emotionally abusive. And she ended up, things escalated one day to the point that she left him and they're divorced. And she had to eventually completely stop talking to him. So what they really meant by angel man was someone who's going to teach you some lessons that you haven't been learning, and it's time you learned them. Because after she divorced him, the kind of men that she dated and the kind of people that she drew into her life began to change and began to improve. So there was definitely like a big lesson and a big turning point and breaking of a pattern that happened because of this marriage to this man. So he definitely helped her. And that's really what they had meant. But she didn't ask, is he going to treat me in a loving way as an equal partner, and will we be happy together? That's not what she asked. And if she had, she probably would have gotten some very different answers. So that's kind of like what I mean by that is like, they're going to answer, and it is very black and white. So it also helps to really think through what you want to ask. If don't just assume that the way you're thinking of something is the way they're thinking of something. I want to skip the area. See, I had an outline and I still messed up. Does anyone have any questions or anything before I move to the next part?
I do. When you hear them, do you hear them in your head, or do you hear them audibly with your ear? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me personally, it's half and half. A lot of times I'll hear them in my head like a voice, but there are definitely times when I'm really open, or like if I've been at a fair all day and I'm doing readings for people and I'm just like all the way on, it'll start sounding like there's someone at my shoulder talking into my ear. Okay. So then I'm hearing them in here and here at the same time. If they're really powerful, or I'm just really open to them, it's the same deal. I'll hear them with my ears rather than with my head. But that's how I work. For different people, they might not really hear them. They might just get ideas about what they're saying. They might see them and read their lips. They might get nothing but feelings, and they understand what's happening through their feelings. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. Mm-hmm. So the hierarchy is like, I made a board, but okay. So the short version is there basically is 3 types of spirits. There's the infernal, and the celestial, which are basically two sides of the same coin. The same rules apply to them. And the Thergeic are basically earthbound. They exist on this planet, or they can at least easily access this planet, where the infernal and the celestial are somewhat removed from here. So the infernal and the celestial, which you could also call them angels and demons, they need to be invited. A lot of times, they not only need to be invited, but you need to do a ritual. You might need to speak their language, give them offerings, really sweet talk them, especially with the celestials. With angels, they do not just come down because you snap your fingers. You need to really sweet talk the crap out of them to get them to, want to come visit. With infernals, it's a little different because nobody talks to them. nobody really wants to like talk to these guys unless they're little nuts or they're hardcore magicians who are trying to learn things in a very rough way. And even then, they make a big, like, a goetic ritual is a big ritual. That's like a lot. I've never done those because that's just way too much work for me. I'm like, I can't do that. It involves a lot. So, but once they're there, like they show up and you don't have to offer them a damn thing except your attention. So that's with these two. With the Thergeic, because they're closer to Earth, they're on Earth, so they've got a little more free will than these two. They can just show up. You're open, you didn't set protection, you didn't specify who you wanted to talk to, so they're going to show up and they're going to be like, well, I'm here. I need some attention. Pay attention to me, talk to me. Oh, you see me, this is great. Now I'm going to just talk your ear off. I'm going to tell you all this stuff. Half of it's not even going to be true. I just want you to pay attention to me. And the Thergeic entities very often will they feed off of energy. Not all of them. Some of them feed off of earth energy itself, like with fairies. Fairies are known to trick people, usually not in a malicious way, but really most of their energy is coming from the earth itself. They're drawing off of that. And they will work with people, but usually not in they're not like they could take you or leave you. Where something that's earthbound, even someone who's dead, if they're not getting through to their family because their family's all closed off, they'll just go for the first open person. Like really open people are like a lighthouse, and all these Thergeic spirits just come flying over like moths and are like, hey, talk to me, oh, pay attention to me. So that, that's kind of along the lines with them. So it can be harder to get rid of a Thergeic spirit in that regard, because first you got to figure out that one is there, which isn't always obvious. But regardless, with both of them, they can be expelled. If you tell them you're not welcome here, you got to go, they have to go. There's no arguing about this. So a lot of times, and that's the same for both. That's the same for basically everybody who's not human. And sometimes with fairies too, if you're on their land, if that's their land, good luck. Like you're just gonna have to learn to live with them, or you're gonna have to leave. They'll kick you out before you'll kick them out. So then there's another group that's kind of, they're half spiritual and half physical. And I'm just going to call them the ultra-terrestrials, because that's what I've heard them being called by other people who know more about these guys than I do. And these would be UFOs, Mothman, Bigfoot, the like stuff that you can see with your eyes and definitely has a physical shape, but they're really earthbound, and they're kind of between dimensions, and they're drawing physical energy and using that to take a shape that they think can be something that people can see and can work with. And then they just kind of, again, they're just feeding off of energy. And a lot of people think that UFOs come from other planets. I don't know for sure, but I don't think that they do. I think they're here. They live here, and they just take different shapes based on what people want to see. And they can be persistent, like they can kind of suck you in, and they really trick people, and they can hypnotize people. And that can be like when you hear about like the abduction stories and stuff like that, that can be kind of dangerous. But again, they're able to do more of these things because they're in a physical form. They're able to take a shape. They're not strictly spiritual. They don't lose that shape until they go back to that other dimension. So it's kind of like they're on Earth, but they're on this Earth and then another version of this Earth, and they can cross back and forth between. And certain times seem to help with that too. And so I would just say, if you don't want to deal with things like that, if you ever encounter one, just walk away from it. Don't pay attention to it. Don't treat it like it's real. But there's a lot of people who do. They, get all into it, and they get caught up in it, and sometimes they go crazy. So those guys can be harder, and those are more on the edge, where they don't quite fit into the other areas, which is why I wanted to single them out. And I also don't know a whole lot about them, so I'm very limited in what I can talk about with them or share about them, just because I don't know. All of my expertise is in stuff that's strictly spiritual, and in communicating strictly with those things. So does anybody have any other questions or comments before we do the demonstration? Does anyone?
The difference between the infernals and the celestials, is the infernal like more of the demon or the harsher side, the celestials more of the good side? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically like a demon's more likely to want to cause you harm.
Right.
I've never heard of angels actively hurting people, or trying to, or I've never heard of them lying to people either, where demons absolutely will.
Okay.
So they are allowed to lie. I don't think angels really don't. So I think it just depends on the kind, but they follow the same rules. They're like bound by the same rules. And even though they have different intentions and different drives, they're both on that same level, where they haven't been human or they haven't been physical for a very, very long time. And they also can both help you. You can work with a demon and get it to do good things for you and help you out. It's just, you're going to pay a price. So it depends on what you want to pay. So does anyone have any other questions?
Do you have to pay a price with angels? Do they want anything?
They want offerings. I have paid with lots of singing, with crystals. When you really, really want something, you could use blood, or you could masturbate and then use your fluids. But I wouldn't recommend doing the blood or fluids unless you really want it and it's a big ask, like someone is deathly ill and you want them to live, like something like that. That's where you bring the fluids in, because once you start giving them fluids, they don't want anything, they won't take anything else. But usually burning sweet smelling things, singing to them. Sometimes they'll specifically ask for a certain thing, and then I'll just go find that thing and I'll offer that to them. Like I have one goddess that I work with, and she wants feathers, and she specifically would prefer feathers that are found in a cemetery. So that's what I give her. Whenever I'm walking around and find feathers on the ground, I pick them up and I take them home and I clean them and put them on my altar. So
What do they do with them?
I don't know. I kind of get the impression that she's drawing energy from them.
Okay.
That if I'm asking the things that I've asked her for help with, I had to give her the feathers before she was able to do those things. But as soon as I gave her the feathers, like literally the next day, I had asked for 3 things. 2 of those things happened. And then the third unfolded as the week went on. So, I mean, that's a good turnaround time, I think.
Have you ever, what if they want something like you said, the fluids, and you don't want to give it to them? Do you talk them down? Do you try to, is there a negotiation?
I just say no, and just leave it like, okay, I guess I'm not getting this thing, like, or I'm not getting this thing from them, or I'll have to find a way to make it happen myself. I personally haven't had that happen, but I would, that would be what my reaction would be, is to just, okay, if that's what you want, we can't do business.
So in a case like that, so can you just kind of cut it off with one celestial being saying, no, I can't do that, and then maybe do a ritual to find another angel or celestial that would help you get what you're looking for and do whatever they need that might be more along with what you can provide?
Yeah, you could
to work out the deal.
you could probably try that. I think if you were having a hard time with meeting an ask, the best thing to do would be to tell that spirit, okay, I can't do this, send them home, and then try to work with a spirit that's culturally related to you. Like if you're Irish, for instance, work with a spirit that's a Celtic god or goddess, or even ancestors of yours. And because they are going to be the most likely to be willing to work with you, because there's a connection to you that is physical, that isn't just your spirit is drawn to them. It's like your DNA is drawn to them. So that can like if I'd had something like that happen, then that would be my next step is to go to the Irish goddesses.
Okay.
Like if the Egyptian ones were to tell me no, then go to the Irish ones, because last time I was Egyptian was 3,000 years ago. So that's a spiritual connection. That's not genetic anymore. But I'm Irish now.
Right.
And you guys are asking like really good questions. So thank you. So is it okay if we move on to the demonstration part?
Yep.
Okay. Does anyone want to volunteer? So I just to be clear, I would be the one who's going to be actually doing the work. Just be one of you guys would be the sitter.
I'll go. You want to use me? Just tell me what to do. I'll just sit here.
Okay. So I'm going to use this little piggy bank as you.
Okay.
Because what I'm going to do, what the exercise is that when I do healing work, I've got to work my way up to that vibration. right? Because healing is the top vibration, then spirit works in the middle, and then psychic work is the lowest tier before humans, like, or how we are when we're not fully open. So I'm going to connect your energy to this and just start with some Reiki and just start kind of working for you psychically, then spiritually, then doing healing. And I'm going to describe as I shift through each one how it feels, to kind of give you guys some ideas of what you might want to look for when you do this. Because the whole goal of this is for you guys to be able to see how your mechanism works and see how you feel as you shift from psychic work to mediumship to healing work. So that will help you to learn when you're working in each of those areas. If you're supposed to be doing healing, but it doesn't feel like healing, it feels like mediumship, you'll be aware of that, and you'll be able to push yourself up a few more notches to get to the healing level. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, I think so. Once we try it or we walk through it,
Okay.
it'll be more clear.
Okay. So this is the proxy. So right away, as I'm opening up, I feel my heart expanding and that energy going out. And even though I'm holding you as the proxy, Angela, I feel myself connecting to you like through the screen. And what I'm picking up on in a psychic sense is I'm kind of seeing you where you are now, but part of you is like jumping up and wanting to go outside. Like there's this impatience, but also an urgency. Like you want to be done with all this stuff, and you want to be able to move on with life as you know it, or as you knew it before the lockdowns and pandemic and all of that exciting stuff. But there's also, it's only half of you. Like the other half's perfectly fine here. I feel like you're still trying to sort out the positive ways that your life has changed because of the pandemic. What do you want to take with you into the new normal? What is that for you? What do you want to take with you, and what do you want to let go of, and what are you all too happy to let go of? And you're still figuring that out. And there's also even a little bit of fear. We've been on and off with this stuff for over a year now. And so you're like, well, what's next? If I have hope and I go back out there, then what happens? Is it going to be okay? Or is some other variant going to come through and rip everything apart again? Like, because you also don't want to get your hopes up too high just to have them crushed again. Does all of that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to like go up now. Okay, so for me to increase my vibration, I imagine like a light going up and breaking through a bunch of panes of glass, so that my energy is being directed from here up. And I feel my connection this way to Angela weakening, but my connection to the proxy is still pretty solid. And now I feel the energy, rather than here, I feel it here, coming out like right here on my crown. And it's just like that, like shooting out. And Angela, I think the person that's coming forward is the friend of yours who's from Africa, who is represented by the leopard because he's wearing a leopard skin.
Hmm.
And he also has, the interesting thing though is he also has a laurel wreath crown on his head. And with Dionysus, he would sometimes wear that and the leopard skin also. So I'm kind of like getting the feeling that maybe he wants to convey to me that there's a free spiritedness to him, a defying convention, that was a part of his personality, because that's what I think of when I think of Dionysus, but also a very loving person and someone who actively encouraged everyone in his life to be the best that they could. Does all of this make sense so far?
Right on with Brian. Yeah, everything that you just said just pins him right down. Yeah, it's giving me goosebumps. Yeah.
Thank
And my
you.
candle started flickering when you said.
Oh, well, I could see it on your shirt.
Yeah. Just every time you started talking and you said he was coming in and the leopard and everything, it was like my candle started flickering.
Yeah.
And when you said, "Oh, it's coming back from the crown," it was like it was going out. It's
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the message that he has for you is he thinks this is awesome, that you're doing this, that you're exploring this. I feel like he can see a little further down the line than you can with all of this, and that there's just, he's like, all these doors are opening. Like it's like maybe you thought you had one option or two things you could do with this, or two ways that this could take your life, and it's more like five. Like there's just so much opportunity and things that will open up to you because of this, and that it's really like leading you in a good place. And also he's like, of course, that he loves you, that he adores you, that he just is so impressed with everything that you're doing. Can you accept this message from him?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go up to the healing part. And as that happens, everything gets quiet. I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything in my head. I don't see anything. I don't, the only thing, I'm not feeling stuff opening, but I am feeling is kind of like my stomach flopping over, as if my body is, as if my soul is partially pulling itself out of my body, as if like my soul is up here rather than here. I hope that makes sense. That's really the only way I can describe it. And I feel really hot, like physically, like I feel like sweaty and warm. And like my hands are a couple of hot irons. So Angela, I just feel that energy, that Reiki energy from the universe just flowing down through me, separating at my chest and shoulders, going down each shoulder, down my arms, through my hands, and into the proxy. It's just like this constant flow. And it feels very peaceful and relaxing. but at the same time, kind of alive, but separate from me, even though it goes through me. So I'm gonna disconnect. And my hands are really warm. They're kind of tingly. So I'm just gonna try to pull my energy back in and close you up.
Okay.
And then kind of disconnect. It's no longer the proxy. This is just a piggy bank. So that's what I would really love it if you guys would practice. You can do it on someone that you know. You can do it on someone like in real life, like they can sit with you and like, hey, can I do a reading for you that ends in a healing? If you don't have anyone like physically in your life, or like they live far away, you can email them or call them or whatever and ask them. And then you would just need like a pillow or some kind of object that would be the proxy. And you just, would say, this is the proxy for, or say that person's name, and make the intention to connect their energy to that proxy, and then work through that. It's probably a lot easier if you have them like on the phone or through Zoom or something, like have them with you in some way that you can give the reading and they can immediately answer, and they can either validate that the information that you're receiving makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense, they could say like, can you explain that a little more? Can you clarify that? Or that kind of makes sense, but can you explain this part a little bit more? And if you guys don't have anyone at all who is willing, feel free to reach out to me. I'm totally fine with being a guinea pig. So, does anybody have any questions about the exercise?
Yeah, no, I think we all want to be able to get to,
Okay.
you have a gift and you have that energy with you. I mean, just when in that healing part, what I was going to say, when your hands are feeling really hot and you're doing things, I begin to feel your energy. And where it put me is that, that yogic space of mindfulness, where it's the inhalation and the exhalation, and it's that breath between, or that after where that space is, you focus on that, where you can clear the mind or whatever you can do when you've got a busy brain and the monkey brain that goes, and the constant day-to-day human brain that's, you can't do it. I go to sit and meditate, and after like 10 seconds I'm like la la la. Yeah. But what you did for the 1 to 2 minutes there, my mind had that, it left when you said the energy and how your hands were cold, but it was flowing through, it was gone. It was like, and I thought, it's like I'm doing yoga meditation inhalations, but it was like, that's the energy that you put in to heal. And I mean, you've always been that way with me, and that's where I think we all kind of want to keep going and doing stuff so we can get to that point, because I need to, you can do it for me, it's great, but my monkey brain keeps going when I'm gonna have to do something on my own. If I could do that healing for me, that would be amazing.
Oh wow.
So it was really, it was really calming, and it was just wow. Like, there was not one thought. It was like, a lot of times the yogics say, okay, just put it in a bubble and let it float away, or just move it. It was like, it was in a bubble, it was gone, there was nothing up there. It was nice. That's really
awesome.
nice. It was really nice.
Thank you. I'm glad that helped you.
Yeah, no, it was great.
I'm gonna turn the recording part